Introduce Professor Kyung Soon, who is the professor of Asset Research Institute and the moderator of this final section titled on Post-COVID-19 and Social Change.
Hello, I think it's time for the fourth session. The title of fourth session is Post-COVID-19 and Social Change. I'm Professor Kyung Soon at the Asiatic Research Institute, Korea University. We have 4 presenters and 4 discussants. First of all, Professor Myung-Jin Hwang, Department of Public Sociology, Korea University, will make a presentation. And his paper will be discussed by Roy-Chun Lee, Deputy Director, Taiwan WTO and RTA Center, Chung Hua Institution for Economic Research.
Hello everyone, the moderator, the fellow speakers, and discussant, and other audiences. I'm glad to be invited, part of this international conference meeting about the consequences and perhaps a new normal of the area due to the COVID-19. My presentation is about social consequences of the outbreaks of COVID-19 has been affecting our society and our social lives, as well as how much the things are worsened or elevated the seriousness of hatred and discrimination in our society. As you can see, this is how we live in these days. With or without COVID-19, we might have the same, lifestyles. Only thing is that the changes, speed of changes. Here's background information. What is a new normal? It's a state to which an economy, society, and some other things settles following a crisis. In this case is COVID-19. When this differs from the situation that prevailed prior to the start of the crisis. We can think about the changes in many different aspects of our social lives, such as family, education, health and medicine, of course, and business, jobs, and government and public sector, social welfare and service provision, as well as cultural event. Well, this might be a little tedious, so I'm gonna speed up a little bit. What has been going on? The pandemics, the emergencies from China in December 2019, the rapid worldwide spread of the novel, the severe acute respiratory syndrome, coronavirus 2 is called first SARS-CoV-2, has led to a pandemic to coronavirus disease, as we know, that COVID-19, creating a global healthcare crisis. Not just healthcare, but it starts from our bodies and our immune systems. Transmission of SARS-CoV-2 occurs through the direction of the contact with the droplets of infected individuals, or through indirect contact with the virus-contaminated surfaces. Notably, asymptomatic individuals, the carriers, may spread SARS-CoV-2 that time, resulting in widespread community infection. Well, elders are the most vulnerable. All those who are underlying disease, such as hypertension, diabetes, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or malignancy, constitute a high-risk population who may show the sudden worsening of symptoms with severe pneumonia or even death. Social distancing or wearing masks are the key in this pandemic area. or self-isolating to minimize disease transmission can lead to social isolation. Yeah. Well, social distancing and social isolation are two different things. So I prefer the physical distancing and social solidarity are more, of the preference. But anyway, we keep the distance in order not to spread the disease and germs. Consequently, there are social isolations, and that causes also depression, cognitive decline, and exacerbation of chronic diseases in elderly individuals who receive health care and welfare services mostly. Uh, from my one of my recent studies, it shows that there are some clinical features of COVID-19, especially commonly seen in the elderly population. All right, the crisis causes transition of daily lifestyle and our expectation on social rules and norms, and that causes new normal, as we know. Background. Well, COVID-19 pandemic is not the first that causes a new normal lifestyle. In Korea, maybe IMF, International Monetary Fund crisis, which occurred in 1997. This financial crisis was perhaps the most significant impact on the whole society of Korea, perhaps after the Korean War. Only in Korea and a few other Southeast Asian countries were affected. Contrarily, a financial crisis 2007 and 2008 are more widespread. The aftermath of global recession following the financial crisis that occurred 2008 to 2012, greater impact on global economies. And we all remember that public funding was spent to save, big global conglomerate like GM. And then there comes the COVID-19 pandemic, starting from 2019, but mostly overt in 2020, and Korea, the February 2020. It is still going on. Why am I talking about COVID and social discrimination? Well, just kind of the main topic of my presentation. Well, first, disease fosters fear, which in turn fosters discrimination. It's very simple, but it's repetitive. In the history, the Black Death kills as many as a third of total population in Korea. I'm sorry, total population in Europe. From 14th to 16th centuries. The historians recorded that the plague started from China and spread it to Indonesia, Persia, that time it was now Iran, Egypt, and arrived in Europe in 1346. In 19th century, yellow fever epidemic was spread in the United States. At that time, European immigrants who were perceived to be more vulnerable to the disease were the primary target of stigmatization because they are seen as carriers. More recently, in the 1990s, when there's AIDS and HIV disease outbreaks, gay people were targeted due to the rumor that spread gays and lesbians were causes and carriers of this disease. During the SARS outbreak, which originated in China, East Asian became the target of more blame. When Ebola outbreak emerged in 2014, Africans were targeted. COVID-19 has brought a similar pattern of social reaction as the epidemic became a pandemic. People got more fearful and panicky. Some tried to find out ways to ease the fear by finding out the target or scapegoat. It's a disease, or not people, but what people see are people, because we can see disease, germs. Here's what happened in Korea. I'm gonna read through the graph for you, because it's mainly written in Korean. The statistics are drawn from the Statistics Korea. The X is the week of progress, and Y X is the cases of mobility. You know, how many people, how many cases are moving internally within the country. When the corona was first, when there was first inflicted person case found, there was about February 2020, and then it increases very sharply in the area of Daegu province, and then mostly hit by the certain sectorial the churches believers. We call it Shincheonji. As you can see, the orange line is 2019. So the total mobility cases, and 2020 is 2020 is a blue line. It drops very sharply, and then the gap between previous years and this year's has never been, you know, narrowed. From the first outbreak on February 20th, then about 5 weeks later, in the mid of April, the government started to take charge, and more enforced social distancing has been executed from the end of the March to the beginning of the April. So that helps reduces prevent the disease spread, and then so therefore the Korean government continued keep this social distancing policies until the national the election was on the beginning of the March, June 10th ish. This table doesn't really shows that much, but you see the curve. What happened is for the people is the next table is showing the overall mobility analyzed by gender and age group. The blue line is male and the orange line is female. Overall, the mobility among women and declines more than men. And age category, the younger than 20s and the 20s had more rapid declines in mobility, as well as 60s and 70s. So younger people and older people got more damage in their social life than male. And the 30s, 40s, and 50s in that category. If you see that the curve, the sign got overlapped, male, female. It was the 13th week of corona outbreak, which was a long weekend. The woman and 20 increased to move because family moved, and the younger people have more long weekend vacation to travel. In terms of regional differences, we can see the Daegu area, so the first and hardest hit areas, and the Gangwon and Busan area, which are known for resort areas, decreased more drastically in terms of the total number of the mobility compared to the previous years season. Well, I'm going to move on to the different aspect how the COVID-19 has affected Korea. First thing is I want to see what traditional media portrayed the COVID-19 outbreak. Well, Professor Jung Jin-ho in the Hanyang University, his major is communication, and he shows in his presentation in conference meetings that what's more important, more dangerous is not the virus itself. It's bad news, which is has more damages on people and society, and which is more contagious than COVID. Why is that? There are positive effect on media, portraying, expose people some information about COVID virus, surveillance, and facilitating the problem solving. Okay, that was kind of pretty much what they have to do. But there are also adverse effect. Threshold shift penetrated, raging and panicking, made people get confused and angry and being panicked. And it also fosters selfishness because this is a survivor game. You can't really depend on your neighbor or public, the government. You have to survive by yourself. So people, instead of work together to help the community and the nation, they chose to become more selfish. One example is, supermarket ran out of the toilet paper. Toilet paper and virus got nothing to do with each other, but they're anxious about surviving themselves, panic buy, and some contagion of terror. People attacked. People are not secure themselves. They are not really generous to other people's behavior. Another thing that we can think about is this is not my area. I have to borrow from the expert in media and communication. Misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. We're talking about fake news. But some news has no harmful intention. They just move the wrong picture and wrong medical information. Okay, we don't blame them. I mean, this is readers, audiences own criteria to screen the wrong information. And the contrary, disinformation is about fabricating information. They make fake news, and then they pretend that they didn't have much harmful intention about it, but they knew how that fake news will affect and malignantly affect the public, which is the most dangerous information that media release to the public. And more information is deliberately manufactures the information. Many things we pretty much know, why and who does it. I'm not gonna say the legacy newspaper, how that deliberately manufactures the fake news to the public for the maybe last 20 years or more. Oh, how do we work with this? We have to do something about this because putting people in the chaos is not the most desirable thing that we can see in this crisis of COVID-19. Reinformation is the key. We provide the public the real information, the truth. And then another thing is I'm gonna put this. Remind you, the purpose of my presentation is how the social societies, social uh, institutions make our existing racism and social discrimination even stronger. Korea has very strong traditions of keeping the religious group pure and orthodox. Some sectarian, usually in the Christianity, is called Shincheonji, very serious, targeted from the public, and they're the cause of disease like that. And people in the Daegu areas, there's no, there's no law that prohibit them to move outside, but there was actually the doctors and physicians in the hospital, when their patients are actually from Daegu area, they block or they refuse to check their patient. That's what happened. And many people blame that why Daegu people have to walk out of their site. They're the carrier kind of thing. So discriminations and public agony against the Daegu people was very strong, and I believe that is still going on, and as of now. Another thing we can think about how the media affect the outbreak of the corona and make things worse in our society, social integrities. We see the media versus social media. We all use, I don't know what you use. I use Facebook a lot, and some people use Twitter, and in Korea, many Korean people have Kakao Talk. And Dr. Jong Jin-ho shows that the media is more aggressive and showing more destructive and harmful things and negative things, increases the fears to the public, as well as social media is less aggressive and is portraying more positive and actually action wise information to people. In other words, how things can be helpful for the receivers of information in this corona area. This is a trajectory of the COVID-19 and mention and infections. Dr. Jung Jin-ho shows there are some correlation between the patterns and the numbers of infected and death cases, as well as exposure of media. The keyword is coronavirus. I don't see much of correlation, but you see the pattern. I'm going to move on to that. Another thing that I want to say about is what's hit the hardest. This is from the 2020 the Commonwealth Fund International Healthcare Policy COVID-19 Supplemental Service. I drew some survey outcomes. The social survey showed that more than half of Latino and nearly half of Black survey. This survey is conducted internationally, but this particular statistics are thrown about the United States. Black survey, Latino and Black respondents reported experiencing an economic challenge because of the pandemic. Substantially more than 21% of white responded, but 39 women reported significant mental health concern related to COVID, compared to only 13 percent point higher. Which was 13% point higher than the men. For people with a low income, the rate of the mental health concern was nearly 20 percent point higher than the rate of the people with higher income. So, poor people got more damages. Both Black and Latino respondents reported the pandemic-related mental health concern at the rate approximately 10 percent point higher than the white. Compared to healthcare providers, state and local officials, and the president, this time Donald Trump is still president as of now, received the lower marks in their responsive to the pandemic. Black survey response held the least favorable view of government leadership. This is not just the case of United States. Korea and other countries might have similar things. The governance of the global risk, I would say. It shows some the extraordinary the information that drawn from the survey. Some serious lacking or suffering of resources and conditions. Analyze divide, racial, economic, and its, gender and other age profiles. WHO is in charge of this pandemic, but are they really performing well? Was actually the very fundamental questions ever since COVID-19 was really spread. How has the WHO been doing these days, reconsidering its role to play in the pandemic area in terms of constructing and distributing information and international cooperation on prevention? But WHO is for healthcare and usually mostly for more vulnerable regions and the people. So this COVID-19 is more widespread, rich people, rich country, and poor people, poor countries. So WHO might have find their limitation on their own functions. Some other issues that we can think about is some countries in the beginning were very successful because they closed down their borders. So in terms of isolation policies, in the very far extreme case was believed the Swedish model. They didn't really make a strong policy or implementation on the social distance. Many media or people, I mean the experts, still shows their pessimistic view on the Swedish decision. But from my understanding, we cannot draw the conclusion yet. Because the Swedish model is also based on scientific theories, I believe. So until the more evidence is being corrected, and then until researchers can find that effectiveness of which policies workable, we would not make a strong conclusion about that. And what about social distancing? How that affect? Yeah, that social distancing might be effective to preventing the disease, but what about the economies, the jobs and incomes? Well, in virtually all of the countries, without any exception, GDP declines compared to what has been expected. People lost their jobs, companies shut down, and some few exception is Amazon, the online commerce sectors, and government, of course, the modern welfare states have to expand their public expenditures and distribute money to the public in terms of public assistance or emergency. That might cause, of course, some financial or monetary difficulties in most of the countries, which is not my area. So I'm going to move on. The global recession and extreme poverty will come. Some people said yes, poor people die from either virus or poverty, so they have to do whatever they have to do, and that government really cannot really keep them from having the social distance and not doing their daily business and going out to work for the earning. Maybe new Marshall Plan can be considered, but again, there might be expert. present, something like that. Is the market still effective? I think that's the biggest challenge, because the market always has many downs and crisis, recession, but still, in this capitalist-driven, the market-driven society, market tend to resolve all the crisis and problem. I'm not a strong believer of perfect market system, but with the caution and relevant control from the government, I believe the market is still working. But who knows what happened? We'll see, next year, a couple of years from now, or 10 years from now, how that market really reshaped our new normal society. I'm gonna draw the conclusion by saying this one. Discrimination. How this COVID has affected through media and through the social apparatus. The media has reported China and Asia are now experiencing increase the hate crime due to the COVID global outbreak. My family lives in Tacoma, state of Washington. Here, I'm a visiting scholar in the University of Washington, where the pandemic gives more harm than the national average, and even worse, compared to Korea. My family stays home, just any of American family. We're not American, but we are not immigrant. We are just short-term resident. But they have fear of getting. We have fear of getting infected as well as racially attacked. A face mask becomes a new social stigma. I mean, I'm talking about a month ago. Right now, most American people wear the mask, but there was quite a moment from the beginning of the outbreak that they refused to wear the mask. They are unsure whether to wear the mask or not, because there was a stigma. Asian people wearing mask, hey, you're the carrier, kind of thing. Cause of discrimination and agony against minorities. Uncertainty was caused by ignorance and fear. I'm going to quote the famous John Galbraith, said that modern society has more uncertainty than before because the society no longer provides and maintains the faith, the vision, or strong and clear leadership to people. An increased level of uncertainty is the cause of discomfort. When society has a higher level of uncertainty because of fear and doubts and general feeling of uneasiness, it eventually leads to us to feel anxiety. People try to avoid or lessen the level of anxiety. When the level of uncertainty increases, it's the very time that when ambitious people start to play the red game, blaming a minority group or victims of disease. Of course, a long run, people recognize they were fake, but it will be too late or too much of the damage that would have been done already. We've seen this, discrimination and hostile against minority immigrants quite many seen. Consequences of hate crime. There was a news from Australia. I'm talking about the beginning stages in the March and April. There was some white nations where Korean people were attacked because of they look Chinese. This is funny, isn't it? We're not Chinese, but we are Chinese. So what can we do? It sounds very silly that, hey, I'm not Chinese, don't hate me, kind of thing. Sorry about that. What can you do about it? Austrian, just small number of people upset, but hate crime against Korean or other Asian or even China. Chinese. In terms of macro politics, the government of Korea have to do something, right? They have to talk to the diplomatic procedure. We have to stand strong won't get immediate and satisfactory outcome expected, but that is what it has to be done. Keep pursuing the effort to eliminate ignorance and fear. In the meantime, we can give guidance to Korean Austrian community, Korean Seattle community, or Asian community as an alliance. But what to do and what not to do. Specifically, let them understand how to avoid physical and verbal conflict. Don't make confrontation. How not to get too much of anxiety, fright, and panic out of it. I had an issue. My wife had an issue in the residence, neighbor, in the shops and stores. What to do? There's nothing we can do, but there is something we have to do. We must not accept their wrong behavior is justifiable. They did wrong. We all know it is a crisis situation. I would not believe that fight back or revenge is any ideal option. What can you do about it? Government and civic society work together. Racism and hate crimes have been perpetrated in our society. It's not new things. Even in Korea, we have not fought enough to challenge against racism and hate crime. Our agony against the minority immigrant people, foreigners, and old people, and people in a small sectarian religious group. Does it really not go away overnight? Because we haven't really done this, Each of us has a small mission. I would suggest a role to play in order to fight against xenophobia. First, tell people, your neighbor, your kids, your friend, the truth. When people say it was Wuhan virus from the beginning, China virus, it's not. It's COVID-19. China has to work on its own mission. I would say that China is the immune for what has been, going on through the COVID. They have to do their own assignment, homework. Get rid of this discrimination. China also had some discrimination internally for some African laborers in Gwangju province, and you said that. I hope that was also fake news, but remind who was the victims, the most vulnerable, and what best we can serve them. People need help for life, not hated by useless cause. People are dying in their homes, hospital, and street. It is devastating to hear the news, but we share the idea that this world is kinder and warmer than when COVID-19 vanishes. Korea has wonderful cases as our mother, which indicate how it is rewarding to be open, honest. Bravery is essential when circumstances seem horrible, fearful, and hopeless. I'm gonna skip this, but I'm gonna close my presentation, not with conclusion, but with this remark. COVID hit the world, and Korea is not the exception. The number of people died. But if we see SARS, MERS, Spanish flu, and the influenzas that comes every year or even twice a year, without vaccine, without cure, still we can fight against COVID-19. How? The more dangerous thing is not the virus itself, the human misconception, agony, and discrimination. By working together to fight against the discrimination, I believe the coronavirus gives more benefit for us and lessons. Oh, I'm really sorry about my presentation. This is not really well organized. I didn't make much of effort to put this presentation that which I should have. I'm really sorry for this. I have to be humble for and grateful for your listening to my presentation. Uh, I hope all you guys stay healthy and safe, and hope to see you in face to face later. Bye bye. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I take the next few minutes to answer the comment raised by Professor Park regarding my presentation. Well, first of all, I would like to thank Professor Park, and I want to say I agree with Professor Park that COVID-19 is the accelerator rather than the cause for some of the new normal we are witnessing now. It is especially true in the case of the structural reform of the global supply chain. The global supply chain is already under reform pressure since the US and China started economic conflicts in 2018. At that time, the supply chain is under pressure to change the source of supply for products made in China for the US market. Some of the suppliers are decided to relocate in other countries, while others decided to take a wait-and-see position. The COVID-19 pandemic, however, is pushing other countries, including Japan, Australia, Germany, France, and other major countries in the European continent, to join this force of global supply chain restructuring. It is therefore a perfect example for COVID-19 as the accelerator rather than the cause for some of the new normal. However, to the contrary, the COVID-19 is also creating a sense of cooperation between countries and creating therefore some new forces to prevent the global economy from falling apart. For example, it is increasingly possible that President Trump might not be able to win his second term, and the tension level between US and China might be reduced under a possible Biden administration in the United States. Secondly, countries might find it more valuable to cooperate and integrate rather than disintegrate economically. Still, issues such as demographic imbalance remain major challenges for many countries post COVID-19. That said, I hope I have answered the question raised by Professor Mark. And once again, I would like to express my gratitude for his comments. Thank you.
Second paper will be presented by Pei Shan Yang, professor at the Department of Social Work, National Taiwan University. And Professor Yang's paper will be discussed by Professor Yunin Jin, Department of Sociology, Korea University.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is my great pleasure to participate in this forum. My topic today is post-COVID-19 and the social change. However, the current situation of global COVID-19 is far from over yet. In fact, it is impossible to keep this presentation updated. So I can only report that as of 2020, October 29, worldwide confirmed cases are 43 million, including many national leaders like the President of the United States and the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. The death toll has reached 1.16 million. The epic number of the infected and the deceased means unbearable, huge losses of human lives and trauma of family and community in developed and developing countries. alike. People have been shocked by the development of COVID-19 from the very beginning of naive hope that the virus would go away quickly, to the first wave of disastrous outbreak, overburdened hospitals, and national and regional lockdowns, to the current second wave of deadly spikes of reported cases, and to the forecast that the virus will probably linger on till the end of 2021 or even afterwards. There have been significant impacts on individuals, families, nations, as well as the globe. Some impacts are so deep that we may dare to say that many things have been changed forever. The number one concern right now is, of course, health. While the world mourns for those who have passed away, those of us who remain uninfected or asymptomatic have also been affected by the pandemic. National health care systems were severely challenged. While some passed the test, some failed, and the other invented new systems or new model of medical care. On the individual level of health, mask wearing has been proven to be the simplest and the most inexpensive way of infectious disease control. But how the different social cultures conceive the effects and the meaning of mask wearing remains quite divided. How much does the pandemic hit the international and national economy? This seems to be another evolving question. According to an International Monetary Fund working paper issued on August 7, 2020, the containment measures have had a large effect on economic activities, equivalent to about a 15% loss. While the ease of containment measures have not led to a pickup as originally expected, it is even more noteworthy that the significance of economic impact varies hugely among countries and among individuals. COVID-19 hit the least developed nations hardest. Nearly half of jobs were wiped out in Africa. Furthermore, workplace closure or business downsizing have affected personal employment and income. Overall, the pandemic has further deepened the already existed inequality and injustice, especially for the disadvantaged people in atypical job markets. United Nations Development Program Administrator Achim Steiner said, "We are risking a massive reversal of gains made over the last 2 decades and an entirely generation lost." Besides economic impacts, family dynamics have been affected due to the work at home and for some, the layoff and the unemployment. While people used to get away from the abusers, many may be forced to interact with their family abusers a lot more. Frequency of disputes or even domestic violence have been reported increasing. The UN has described the increase of domestic violence as a shadow pandemic. To aid people suffered from domestic violence, social services have to develop innovative formats and models. But many non-for-profit organizations or non-government organizations may not be well equipped to transform into the digital age. Or service providers may be reluctant to change because of their belief to be with their disadvantaged clients. Overall, as mayor of Taipei, Ke Wen-je said in a forum in July 2020, life cannot simply return to the old days. We need to go straight to a transformative new future, the so-called new normal. And technology is the largest force that transforms the industries and the whole economy. Taiwan has ranked one of the most successful nations around the world while combating COVID-19. There are only 7 deaths up to now. The success is built upon 2 major foundations. One is the National Health Insurance, and the other is a transparent command system led by the Central Disease Control Bureau. The CDC has hosted a press conference almost every day at 2 o'clock in the afternoon for the longest period of time during the height of the pandemic to report to the citizens the latest development and reminders of disease control measures. There is a record high consensus to protect the healthcare professionals and the national health insurance system. Priority was given to the provision of sufficient supply of personal protective equipment, PPE, to the frontline healthcare workers, including hospitals, clinics, and institutions caring for the aged and the disabled. Standard protocols were broadcast frequently on traditional and social media to reinforce mask wearing, social distancing, hand washing, and ethanol disinfection of the surroundings. Though policy regarding testing for coronavirus was once divided among medical and public health experts in Taiwan, the CDC stood firm on the strategy of 14-day quarantine and border control. The only one exception came from Changhua County's testing for coronavirus antibody of 10,000 local residents, which was assisted by National Taiwan University School of Public Health, but unfortunately prematurely cancelled after causing a few days of news saga. This also demonstrated a strong governance and political power by the ruling party of DPP. Yet, with or without large-scale testing, both the central and the local government authorities have shown strong will and capacity to protect the community health in Taiwan. Individual citizens have also shown great resilience to endure the change and the inconvenience of the new normal lifestyles. Not only keeping their own health, people also make efforts to help monitor their friends' and neighbors' health by providing health reminders, sharing preventive equipment like masks, and restraining from large gatherings. The fight for health shall be grounded in the communities and in everyday life in the future. And how to enhance community health and how to monitor individual health conditions while respecting individual freedom will be the real social challenge after COVID-19. Besides government rules and regulations, I believe that non-for-profit organizations will play a key role to help individuals, family, and in particular, the vulnerable groups to maintain or even promote their health. WHO provided a framework of integrated care models as shown in my PPT. We can see that in order to maintain the healthcare system, community plays a key role in terms of gathering social resources and implementing policies. To support communities as well as the national health systems, we need an integrated care models. And in order to achieve improved outcomes, all the citizens need to be informed, activated, and patient. And the healthcare system needs to be prepared, to be proactive, and we need a strong practice team. Some new industries or lines of industry may came about after COVID-19. For example, mask production has become a fashion industry, I believe globally. But this picture shown in my PPT is a specially designed mask for our national holiday on October 10th. As we mentioned, COVID-19 hit the least developed nations hardest. Nearly half of jobs were wiped out in Africa. We have even witnessed a micronation, the Principality of Hot River in Australia, which was heavily dependent on its income from tourism. This micronation was dissolved due to COVID-19. And we shall never forget COVID-19's impact on human rights. For example, we have seen border closure for many nations, and that put extra burden on people who try to do immigration. The number of adults who are food insecure in Britain is estimated to have quadrupled under COVID-19 lockdown. That's an example of food and water insecurity. We know that not all households were equally affected, but for adults with disabilities and adults with children, they were the hardest vulnerable groups. Other groups at risk of poverty are also at higher risk of food insecurity at this time. So, has COVID-19 really changed the way we live? Or it hasn't? We have to face the reality of living and working in virtual space now, as we have been tested by this virus. But there are 4 serious challenges that we must face. The first one is the digital divide. The second one is the rich versus the poor. The third one is the urban versus the rural areas. And the fourth one is the young versus the old. If we are going to face the reality of living in virtual space, we must admit that we have to deal with these 4 challenges first. In sum, what do we need in order to fight COVID-19? In my presentation, I propose 3 important things. First, we need to do collective action. Human beings and the globe, we are a wholesome body. We should not be divided by any factors, especially in this COVID-19 epidemic. The second one is we need borderless solidarity. Human beings need to get together and help each other and allow whoever has the capacity to help themselves as well as help others. The third one is multidisciplinary collaboration. COVID-19 has taught us that we need everybody to play their own role, personal as well as professional, in order to win this game. How may universities help? We may do research and innovation. We try our best to link knowledge and action, and we use university social responsibility programs to help our communities. Taiwan can help, and the National Taiwan University can help by innovative equipment like Pandemic Prevention #1. And my research has indicated that if we do the right thing, we will see successful prevention and conquer of COVID-19. And we must remember there are hidden costs like the health and well-being of social care professionals. So, we will try to work together and to reconstruct a healthy life for all, for the young and the old, for the rich and the poor, for the developed as well as the developing countries. That's my presentation for today. Thank you for listening.
Hello, this is Professor In Jin Yoon in the Department of Sociology at Korea University. It is my honor and pleasure to be a discussant of Professor Pei-Sheng Yang's presentation on post-COVID-19 and social change. Professor Yang has made an interesting and informative presentation on the situation of COVID-19 and factors important for the prevention of COVID-19 pandemic. Among many points she has made in her presentation, I want to draw our attention to the first slide of international differences in the confirmed cases and the deaths of COVID-19. Taiwan has recorded the smallest number of confirmed cases and deaths, followed by South Korea. Japan and the United States, which used to be known as well-developed countries, have performed very poorly in the prevention of pandemic. Based on her presentation and my own idea, I propose an explanatory model of COVID-19 pandemic control. Here, the outcomes are the number of confirmed cases and deaths of COVID-19 and the social turmoil and conflict due to the spread of COVID-19. Taiwan and South Korea belong to the success group because the number of pandemic victims and the social turmoil has been low and under control. Factors that affect immediately the outcomes include government administrative control, mobilization of people, and healthcare system. Taiwan and South Korea have shown during the crisis effective government administrative control and mobilization of people, both ordinary people and healthcare professionals. Also, the two countries have developed cost-effective, high-quality, and universal healthcare system that has been effective in combating the further spread of COVID-19. These immediate factors are influenced by background factors, which include political legitimacy of a government, human capital and social culture of people, and the social divide or inequality by race, region, class, and culture. The government elected by fair election has political legitimacy and can exercise effective administrative control over people. The political leadership is especially crucial in times of a national crisis like the COVID-19 pandemic. The high level of human capital, as measured by high level of education and literacy, and the social culture of diligent infection control since SARS and MERS make possible for effective mobilization of people for a national goal. Also, a more homogeneous and equal society is more likely to mobilize people in a national crisis. In my opinion, Taiwan and South Korea have these background and immediate factors, and as a result can be more successful in preventing the COVID-19 pandemic. I would like to point out pros and cons of social control. The bright side of a society effective in social control is its advantage in taking collective actions against the national risks like the COVID-19 pandemic. However, the danger of a society effective in social control is likelihood of invasion of individual rights and privacy in the name of a national goal. Also, minorities and disadvantaged classes of people are likely to be adversely affected by coercive prevention measures of the government. They are more likely to lose jobs and to fall behind the poverty line. Non-contact activities and businesses are expected to become more normal forms of life in the post-COVID-19 era. Big data and artificial intelligence will further develop networked knowledge industry. In the past, knowledge was more or less individually owned and transmitted. Books, newspapers, records, and videotapes are traditional forms of knowledge. Nowadays, knowledge is networked and used and transmitted freely in the internet space. This development in information and knowledge-intensive industry will create bigger gaps in opportunities and wealth between people who can adapt more easily and actively and those who fall behind the race. As a result, social inequality and social conflict are likely to grow in the post-COVID-19 era. We need to prepare potential risks of non-contact society. First, we need to provide tools for using network knowledge to less adaptable people. Also, we need to educate and train them to use network knowledge. Finally, we need to find ways to distribute more equitably wealth accumulated in the network knowledge industry to less adaptable people. Universal income or other forms of support for the disadvantaged classes of people in non-contact society should be more actively discussed to reduce social inequality and foster social solidarity and harmony.